Today I'm going to speak about the collaboration involved in reviewing the second year BA Humanities module, Primary Source Research, so that it could be delivered online for this academic year. Part of this presentation is based on a previous presentation given by myself and Dr. Naomi McAreevy to the Library Association of Ireland Rare Books Group annual seminar in 2019. So I'm just going to give some background to the BA Humanities programme and explain what the objectives of the module were when it was first conceptualised. I'll explain how the module was delivered in the first semester of 2019. I'll go on to look at the second semester, spring 2020, during which the first lockdown occurred, and how we moved the module online in the middle of term. And then I'll speak about our discussion how to deliver the module for the academic year 2020-2021, the decisions involved, the materials chosen, the mode of delivery, and the many collaborations involved in making this possible. I'll also speak about the outcomes as we perceive them at the moment. So the BA Humanities programme is an interdisciplinary and multi-subject degree that offers a number of defined pathways, providing coherence and depth to student learning within a carefully designed framework of related subjects. It was first offered in the academic year 2019-20. The module, called Primary Source Research, was developed through collaboration between library and academic staff in the College of Arts and Humanities. Offered as a core module on stage 2 of the programme, the module aims to develop students at disciplinary and multidisciplinary knowledge skills and values through the in-depth critical examination of primary source materials. The development of Primary Source Research module was the result of many years of successful partnerships between Special Collections and the College of Arts and Humanities in the areas of exhibition curation, collection development, and information provision. However, undergraduate visits to Special Collections had typically been of a show and tell nature. We were keen for the students in this module to engage in a more robust interrogation of the sources. We hoped that by giving students the opportunity to engage with Special Collections at an early stage of their programme, they would be more likely to make use of the resources in their other modules, and particularly also in their final year dissertation. We wanted to strengthen teamwork skills, develop presentation skills, and develop information and digital literacy skills. So, what is primary source literacy? So, primary source literacy can be defined as a combination of knowledge, skills, and abilities necessary to effect, find, interpret, evaluate, and ethically use primary sources within specific disciplinary contexts in order to create new knowledge or to revise existing understandings. And this definition is from a document entitled Guidelines for Primary Source Literacy, developed by the Society of American Archivists and the Association of College and Research Libraries. And every image that you're seeing on the screen here today is something that's from UCD Special Collections. So the image, the photograph there is of Patrick Kavanagh. I think he's saving hay. And the image there on the top is, it's an image from Frank McGuinness's play Carthaginians. And we have Frank McGuinness's archive in UCD Special Collections as well. So the primary source research module gives students an authentic hands-on experience of research in the arts and humanities. There were more than 160 students taking the module last year across 2 offerings, 1 in each semester. Small groups of 4 or 5 students were formed within specific disciplines, and groups were assigned a relevant item from Special Collections. Groups were required to produce an exhibition or presentation featuring the assigned Special Collections item, which they presented and discussed in a 10-minute group presentation in the last class. The image above is that of the students, groups of students examining and discussing their assigned primary sources in our reading room in semester 1 of 2019, when the world was normal. So in the first year, the module was taught through 1 lecture and 1 workshop or tutorial per week over 12 weeks. All students on the module were expected to attend the lectures, which were delivered by a series of guest lecturers who brought together expertise from different schools in the college and various areas of the library. Through the lectures, students learned about the history of UCD Special Collections and other cultural heritage repositories, the key concepts of primary source literacy and good handling practice for handling rare materials. They were also introduced to archival theory. The workshops were organised by discipline, with all the workshops delivered by the same skilled, experienced tutor, Dr. Leanne Waters. So I think that the process around the selection of sources was very important from a special collections point of view at this point. It was through creating lists of resources that related in some way to each pathway that the richness of our collections was communicated to our academic colleagues. I think it might be useful here to give sample of some of the items we selected for the first year. So from left to right on the screen, the first item is an annotated draft of the short story Tom from the Mary Lavin archive. The second item is a late 19th century books on the excavations of Mycenae. The third item there on the top is part of the archival collection of Edna O'Brien here in UCD. Then on the bottom row, the first one there on the left is an engraving of the Roman baths of Caracalla from Giuseppe Vasi's Della Magnificenza di Roma Antica e Moderna from 1747. The middle is an 18th century pamphlet entitled Claudius and Cicero. And the final item on the bottom left is a leaflet relating to the burning of the Four Courts during the Irish Civil War. So that's a little quick tour through special collections there. So in semester 2, we had a different cohort of students and had a different selection of material which aligned to their pathways. The students were from English with creative writing and English drama and film. We had chosen material from our rich collection of 20th and 21st century literary archives, including those that I mentioned, Edna O'Brien and Mary Lavin, also Maeve Binchy and Frank McGuinness. This material is all in copyright and was not digitally available. The tutorials took place in special collections in the reading room. 2 of them took place there, and the students had the chance to see the materials in person and to visit with their groups. And then on March 13th, we closed the reading room and did not open again to readers until the end, for the rest of term. So this was a huge blow for the module, which, as we had envisaged, was based on interaction with physical objects within our reading room space. We were very relieved that the students had a chance to see the material and that they already had a lot of work done on their presentations. The tutorials were held live and were moved onto Zoom, and the remaining lectures were delivered asynchronously via videos on Brightspace. Some of the students really felt that they needed access to the materials, however, in order to complete their projects. This was very difficult to achieve as the reading room was closed and the material was all in copyright. So we needed permissions to allow digital access. So I looked for permission to make digital copies, and I was lucky that I had good relationships with some of the authors like Frank McGuinness and with the estate of other authors such as Mary Lavin and Maeve Binchy. And they agreed to allow me to make copies of a limited number of documents and that I could make them available via Brightspace. The students continued their group work online and produced their presentations collaboratively despite the lockdown. So despite all of these challenges faced by the students, the presentations that they produced were excellent. It was clear that the learning objectives of developing primary source literacy and group work skills within this cohort of students had been achieved. And we were delighted and relieved at the end of that term. And I really must say that the students' presentations, the fact that they had to put together their presentations online collaboratively at a distance was a great challenge to them, and they really, really did very, very well with that. So facing into 2020-2021, the only thing that was clear was that the module could not run as it had in the previous year. So this was problematic as from a special collections point of view, the visits to the reading room and interaction with the materials had been seen as fundamental to the module. However, the module coordinator, Dr. Naomi McAreevy, and I worked together to design a module that could be delivered exclusively online and that any face-to-face element was an added value rather than fundamental to the learning objectives. In designing the lockdown version of the module, we looked at and prioritized the learning objectives. Our key objectives were that the students would develop knowledge about our cultural heritage repositories and the material held there, develop their primary source literacy, and develop their group work skills. So thankfully, for the last 20 years, UCD Library has been digitising material from special collections, UCD archives, and the National Folklore Collection, as well as some other repositories, external repositories, digitally preserving the collections and making them available via the UCD Digital Library. In planning how to deliver a primary source research module for the BA Humanities, we examined the various collections that had been digitised and discussed which collections would best illustrate the key concepts of primary source literacy, something that would form the basis of a presentation, and something that would be suitable to look at as part of a group. This year, we decided that we were not going to align content with specific subject pathways. We discussed whether our decision in previous years to try to give students content in relation to their specific pathway had contributed to the fulfillment of the learning objectives of primary source literacy and group work skills. And our experience of the previous year had taught us that this was not essential. After some discussion, it was decided that periodicals would be the core resource to be examined by the students in their groups. There were several reasons why we decided to use periodicals as a main focus of research. The first reason was that we had a good selection available on the digital library, and they all covered a particular period, the late 19th and early 20th century. The diversity of content within periodicals was another major reason. We felt that this would allow students coming from a variety of disciplines within the humanities to find content of interest within the journals. The students could look at genres, the layout, the seriality, editorship, illustrations, advertisement, authors, and cost. And these are just some examples of how periodicals can be investigated by a researcher. Incidentally, two of these publications are actually UCD Student Magazines. So the two in the middle there, actually Hermes and St. Stephen's, are UCD Student Magazines. For semester 1 of 2020, the reading room was open for 2 days a week. So as well as being able to access the periodicals online, the students did also have the opportunity to visit special collections by appointment in that semester. The National Folklore Collection allowed special collections to make the other periodicals, Shan van Vogt and Pat, available for consultation in our reading room. We also exhibited the periodicals in a display case outside the reading room. Unfortunately, because of the COVID situation, our reading room is currently closed, so the students working on the module this semester have not had the opportunity to visit yet anyway. I also produced a video for the students, which I filmed in special collections. In the video, I showed the physical journals laid out on the table in the reading room so that the students who did not have the opportunity to visit could see the physical object. And that's very important this semester. I pointed out the physical aspect of the journal, such as the scale, the layout, the paper quality, and how the materials, the periodicals, were bound. So having decided that the periodicals would form the basis of the research project, we wanted to introduce students in the module to some other types of materials within the cultural heritage repositories. And when I say cultural heritage repositories, I refer here to special collections, UCD archives, and the National Folklore Collection. We also wanted them to see how we had organised our collections and how we had produced exhibitions and presentations relating to the collections. The students were introduced to the Kavanagh Archive in UCD Special Collections by Dr. Lucy Collins. Lucy gave a lecture to the students where she explained how she had approached the archive with the goal of creating an exhibition, explaining what were the various deciding factors in picking material for the exhibition and how she constructed a narrative. Having listened to the Kavanagh exhibition lecture, the students were asked to look at the Kevin Barry papers, which were available to the students on the UCD Digital Library. The Kevin Barry papers, the hard copies, are held in UCD archives. This is a relatively small collection that included material of many different formats. Students were asked to consider the process of taking a list of material relating to a person's life and creating an exhibition narrative that would be engaging for a viewer. The collection contained Barry's school textbooks and letters, documents relating to his arrest and court-martial, letters of sympathy written to his family after his execution, as well as more unusual items like his slitter and his Belvedere school cap. This task also related to a lecture on archival theory, which was delivered by Dr. Elizabeth Mullins from the School of History and Archives. For both semesters this academic year, we continued with the delivery mechanisms that we had used for the first lockdown in March and April. The module was taught through one lecture and one workshop or tutorial per week over 12 weeks. And in the first semester, as we know, it was 10 weeks because we all started later. The lectures were delivered asynchronously with videos of the lectures being posted on Brightspace. So the image here is a screenshot of a video lecture by Dr. Laura Loftus about periodicals. And Laura is also the module coordinator for the module this semester. We did have to change the focus of some of the lectures to better suit the resources that the students were working on. And the lecture content, rather than being delivered in 50-minute segments, were given in 20 or 25-minute segments to better suit the online environment. The workshops were still organised by discipline, with all of the workshops delivered via Zoom by Laura Loftus, Dr. Leanne Waters and Roseanne Gallen. The tutors have generally found that this medium has worked. There is an extra focus on the workshops this year, though, as this is the only time that the students are meeting one another and their teachers in real time. So the students worked on their research projects in groups and uploaded the presentations to Brightspace for assessment. In the first year, we had encouraged the students to consider using a diversity of presentation media such as Prezi, Story Map and digital timelines, as well as PowerPoint. Given all the challenges that the students faced this year, we have not pushed this aspect of the skills development, and most of the presentations have been delivered in PowerPoint, which is enough of a challenge, I think, for the students who are all working at a distance from one another. As with last year, the standard of the presentations delivered in semester 1 of this year was excellent. Their research projects on the periodicals demonstrated that they had learned to evaluate and interpret these late 19th and early 20th century Irish periodicals, looking at concepts of nationalism, feminism, authorship, audience and genre, and had revised existing understandings and in some cases created new knowledge. It is clear to us that despite the online environment, the students had clearly developed primary source research skills. Dr. Naomi McAreevy, pictured here, was the module coordinator for the first 3 semesters. And when she was speaking about the students' self and peer evaluation forms from semester 1, 2020, she said, the students were overwhelmingly positive about what they got out of the module. And many of them were really thoughtful about what they had achieved in terms of group work, primary source literacy, and even personal development. Dr. Leanne Waters, a tutor on the module for the first 3 semesters and the only tutor for the academic year 2019-20, said, I can already see how it can produce a different type of undergraduate student, one who is more critically engaged, more independent, more intellectually adventurous, more interdisciplinary in their thinking, and of course more skilled in working across a range of primary materials. The whole concept of this module has from the beginning been based on collaboration between Special Collections and the College of Arts and Humanities. An excellent working relationship between Special Collections staff, the module coordinators and the tutors has been crucial to the success of the module and has made its move online a smooth and collegial process. A fundamental aspect to our ability to make this module available online was the availability of our primary source material on the UCD Digital Library. Most of us would acknowledge that group work is for students a Marmite experience, and we often hear a lot about students who don't like this type of work. But because of the lockdown, this module in which they are working in groups is one of the few opportunities the students have to interact with each other. Because of this, the feedback from the tutors who have worked with them each week in the workshops is that they like the module because of the group work. And this makes sense, but it's not something we necessarily would have predicted. And finally, Brightspace has played an integral part in the delivery of the module. All the lectures, links to the resources and some of the reading materials have been made available via Brightspace, and it has been possible to lay out the different parts of the module clearly for the students. So all of this collaboration has involved a lot of people working together effectively across their various roles. As well as Dr. Naomi McAreevy, Dr. Leanne Waters, Dr. Laura Loftus and Roseanne Gallen, who have been the module coordinators and tutors on this module, I'd like to acknowledge the staff of Special Collections, Eugene Roach, Daniel Keneally, Laura Ryan, Catherine Milligan, and also the library liaison librarians, particularly Jenny Collery and Vanessa Buckley. I'd also like to thank Brian Kelly from the library, who produced a great video for us on handling rare materials and that was done specifically for the students of this module. And also Jane Nolan, who did instructions with the students in the first year on creating timelines and story maps. I'd also like to pay tribute to the lecturers from the College of Arts and Humanities who've worked on this module, including Lucy Collins, Elizabeth Mullins, and also the College Programme Office, who worked to timetable this fairly complicated thing when it first started. It should be noted that Professor Fionnuala Dillane, as Associate Dean for Arts and Humanities, was instrumental in establishing the module, and Fionnuala also gave one of the lectures this year. Moving this module online would not have been possible without the availability of the periodicals and the other digital collections that the students used. This has all been made possible by the UCD Digital Library team, Audrey Drohan, Orna Roach, Peter Clark, Clark and their collaboration with UCD Archives, the National Folklore Collection and Special Collections on the digitisation, cataloguing and preservation of our wonderful collections. This is a continuous process. Each year a variety of collections is added to this corpus of digital material. It has been my pleasure to work with all of these great UCD staff in this module, and I have learned so much. Finally, I want to say that the most gratifying part of this, however, has been viewing the students' excellent presentations, whether in person or online, knowing that this module has genuinely helped develop their research skills and made them more critically engaged. I've genuinely learned about our holdings from the work that the students have done. So that's it for me. I hope you've enjoyed listening to this, and I'll be happy to take any questions that anyone might have.
Thanks so much, Evelyn. So as I mentioned at the beginning, if you've got questions, you can pop them in the chat, but also feel free at this point to unmute yourself and ask them. That might be easier than typing. We've got a few minutes left until the 1 o'clock mark, so plenty of time for questions if anyone has them. That was really interesting, Evelyn. It's not something that I get to see a lot of the time, so it's really interesting to see some of the work that's been ongoing there and how adaptable and flexible you had to be. I think you kind of smoothed over a bit of how much work was involved in a few of the steps there by just kind of stating them, because there was some stuff there about having to reach out and get agreement to use materials and stuff. Yeah, I'd say that was a lot more work than you.
Well, we do have relationships with the people whose collections we have and the estate of the people. So, I mean, I think all of this work, like all work, is kind of based on good relationships. So, it was something that I didn't really want to have to do, but it became clear that the students did need access to some of the material because they'd been literally cut off in the middle of doing their presentations, and they had expected to be able to come in and out of the reading room every day.
Of course, yeah.
So we were lucky that we were able to contact these people, and we were lucky that they agreed. And also we were lucky that we were able to put it up on Brightspace, which is, an online environment, but that it's closed. So we're not like making it public, So Brightspace has been really fundamental to all of this working as well. But I mean, I never would have envisaged that we would really have been able to deliver this online. The whole concept of it really was very much based on physical materials and having students come into a physical space. And I mean, the thing is that is still important, because part of what we wanted to do was get them used to coming into that space, so that when they moved on in their studies, they were comfortable coming into the space again when they were working on other aspects of their degrees. So that is one thing that is lost, but thankfully the most fundamental objectives, which is that they develop their group work skills, and I mean, their group work skills are really challenged in this environment, but they've really done really well. I just stopped sharing there. And the primary source literacy skills through the digitized objects has actually worked out really well. So, so things, I mean, I suppose we're challenged, but then there's surprisingly good results, which is great.
That's one of the things I was going to ask, and I've kind of tried to ask everyone this. Is there one thing that stands out to you that you'd be bringing forward into whatever the future might look like, even if that future is a complete return to campus with everything being as it was before? Is there anything you'd carry over from your experiences?
I mean, I think there are. Now, I can't just think off the top of my head what might be the one thing, but I suppose one thing we have noticed is in the first year, if you've seen from the presentation, we had given a real wide variety of materials to the students to look at. So one group could be looking at, a book that was 200 pages, and then another group were looking at a periodical, and a different group would have been looking at just a piece of ephemera that could be quite short. And I think having the students all look at something that is quite similar in its format could be something that we would look at bringing forward, because there's kind of an equity there. What they don't get from that, obviously, is learning about all of the different types of formats and what you can you know, it is possible to learn as much from a single piece of ephemera as it is from a book if you look at it in a particular way. And I think that sort of is lost. So maybe just the format could be something that we would look at carrying forward. There are probably lots of other things as well. I mean, we had to be really, really organized as well on Brightspace. And
I noticed that there's a comment in the chat there from Naomi McReevy asking if she can come in here. So maybe I'll if that's okay with you, then
of course, yeah.
Thanks very much. So I worked with Evelyn on the module, and in response to your question, Jeremy, about what we would bring forward. And I think the challenge of moving so quickly online and knowing that it was going to continue into the next academic year meant that we really did go back and think, what is the most important thing? I mean, Evelyn mentioned the learning outcomes when we went back and said, what is the absolute essential things that we want the students to take away from this module? And it really, really helped to clarify what we were trying to achieve and strip away the things that weren't necessary. And as Evelyn said, I think that the Marmite experience of group work, and I notice a question has come up about that as well, you know, that we were really surprised, we were so anxious, and the students were anxious as well, you know, how will group work in the online environment? And it actually just made us feel so happy that we had got this for the students, because they really, really benefited, particularly in March and April, whenever everyone was in mega crisis mode, for them to have the support of each other and a reason to meet up with students every week, because of course they see the fellow students in classes and so on, but they had to get together, they had to meet outside of class time, and they had a reason to work together that really, really helped to build and sustain relationships. And I hope that they'll always take that experience with them as they go forward, but definitely it's kind of reassured us about the importance of group work.
Absolutely, and actually that feeds in quite nicely to another question that was asked here by Brenda Ryan. Would you recommend collaboration between students to be introduced in other modules so that students can get to know each other, especially first year students? It's something that we've seen come up again and again in the sessions, is that idea of students not having an excuse to meet each other anymore, not bumping into each other or going for coffee or whatever. So, you know, as much collaboration as we can get going between them is a good idea, I would think. And it sounds like that's certainly been your experience as potentially the most valuable aspect of what they're doing here. But I don't know, would you have any further thoughts on that based on how the question is phrased? I mean, I think you would recommend collaboration, would you?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the only thing is that these are second years, so I suppose the only thing is that they had kind of known each other to a certain extent, and then they're in this group work scenario. So that might make a difference. But I mean, I really think it probably would work with first years as well. I think that they'd grab on to any experience where they're not sitting on their own in their bedroom listening to a video lecture.
Yeah, absolutely. Of course. Okay, well, look, we're nearly at the 1 o'clock mark, and there's some nice comments there, which obviously you can read through in your own time. But what I'll do is I'll wrap up there and say that if there is further discussion, or if you want to talk about this more, we have the Google Currents running parallel to this. A link is about to be stuck into the chat there, which you can click on, and you'll basically be brought into the Currents, and you can see the discussions that are happening, and there'll be a place there for any conversation to continue if you're interested in doing that. But just to say thank you very much to Evelyn for your time and for that presentation. That's it now until 3 o'clock. I think we don't have the next session until 3. So thanks very much. Enjoy your lunches, and see you.
Thanks very much, everybody. Thanks, Naomi, as well. Thanks, Jeremy.
Thanks very much.